Eyeless Jack. You wake alone in your room, disturbed by some noise close to your bed. At first, when you open your eyes, all you can see is darkness and black. You stare straight up and listen, straining your ears to pick up the faintest and smallest sound. The sound on the edge of hearing, the sound of noise being withheld, of something deliberately trying to silence. To stalk and to hunt, your eyes begin to adjust. You still see only darkness, but now, with terror, you begin to realize it was not in the darkness of the room, but the dark, empty void staring out from the hollow eye socket of the thing leaning over your bed. Hello, my name is Mitch. I'm here to tell you guys about an experience I had. I don't know if it was paranormal or whatever stupid word people describe supernatural phenomenon, but after this thing visited me, I believe in the paranormal trash now. A week after I moved in with my brother Edwin, after my house was foreclosed, I finished unpacking. Edwin liked the idea of me moving in, since we had not seen each other for 10 years, so I was excited. I soon fell asleep after I moved in. After that first week, I heard rustling noises coming from outside. At about 1 in the morning, I thought it was a raccoon, so I ignored it and tried to fall asleep. The next morning, I told Edwin about it, and he agreed. The next night, however, I thought I heard my window opening and a loud thump, as if something entered my room. I darted up and looked around my room, but I saw nothing. The next morning, Edwin dropped his coffee cup. When he saw me, he held up a nearby mirror and saw myself. I had a large gash on my left cheek. After I was rushed to the hospital, my doctor told me that I must have been sleepwalking, but then he showed me something that made my blood turn cold. He lifted my shirt to reveal a sewn-up incision where my kidneys were. I stared into his eyes, mind-widening. "You somehow lost your left kidney last night," my doctor told me. "We don't know how, though. Sorry, Mitch." The next night was my breaking point. At around midnight, I woke up to a truly horrifying sight. I was staring face to face with a creature with a black hoodie and dark blue mask with no nose or mouth staring down at me. The thing that scared me the most was that it had no eyes, just empty, black sockets. The creature who had some black substance dripping from its sockets. I grabbed a camera from a nearby mantle and took a picture. I immediately, after taking the shot, the creature lunged at me and tried to claw open my chest to get to my lungs. I stopped it by kicking it in the face. As I ran out of the room, I grabbed my wallet. I would need the money. I ran out of my brother's house into the night. I eventually ended up in the woods near Edwin's house and tripped on a rock. I fell unconscious and I woke up in the hospital. My doctor, the same one who treated me before, entered the room. "I have good news and bad news, Mitch," my doctor started. "The good news is that you have minor injuries and your parents are going to pick you up." I sighed with relief. "The bad news is that your brother has been killed by something. Sorry." My parents took me back to Edwin's house to collect the remaining belongings, which I did. Upon entering my room, I was scared, but I remained calm. I grabbed my camera and stopped dead in my tracks in the hallway leading to the room. I saw Edwin's body and something small laying next to it. I retrieved it and entered into my parents' car. Not mentioning Edwin's corpse, I looked at the thing that I had picked up and nearly vomited. I was holding my stolen half-eaten kidney with some black substance on it. Every child's fear. You remember that feeling, don't you? The feeling that you're being watched? That if you make the slightest movement, you're dead? Everybody had that fear as a child. You wake up at night and you can't get back to sleep. shuffling back and forth from one comfortable position to the next, hoping to find a sudden slumber. You give up. There's no way you're gonna get back to sleep anytime soon. So you simply turn to your side and stare out to the window, the road, the lights, and trees. All seems so strange under the cover of night. You try to keep your mind quiet of any distractions. Remember that you still need to sleep, and that's when the feeling hits you. The feeling swarms over you like an ice-cold blanket that has just been spread across your back. You remember that it is night, and that night is when you fear likes to hunt. You feel almost as if you are being watched from behind you. You can't see it, but its eyes are trained on you. You want to move, but you can't. If you do, something bad, no, something horribly wrong is going to happen to you. The only thing you can do is remain quiet and still, and then it won't notice you. As you lie in your bed frozen in fear, you begin to think about your bed sheets. If only you could quickly grab your sheets and throw them over yourself to hide your body from whatever evil monstrosity stands behind you. It could be done, perhaps, if you're fast and precise. If you succeed, you decide to think no longer. You flip yourself up and grab your bed sheets with both hands. Without looking around the room, you swipe back down, covering yourself with a thick blanket safety. It is then that your mind comes back to you, and you remind yourself that there is nothing there. Darkness clouds the mind and causes it to hallucinate, with the only limitation being your imagination. You slowly poke your head out of the sheets and scan your eyes around the room. Nothing. Then place your head back on the pillow and slowly drift to sleep. This is every child's fear, and parents tell the children to go back to sleep. And that is good for them to work through their fears. They are wrong, because that's what they don't want you to know, is when the children hide under their covered bed sheets. The real fear is not what is standing over them, but what is staring at them from under the covers. My Little Pony theory. You'll have probably know about the new generation of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. It has, for one reason or another, become an overnight sensation. Whether or not you like the show yourself, you have to admit that its success is impressive. However, it raises questions that Lauren Faust has worked on a popular show, and has been working on the show of her line of toys, the Galaxy Girls. How did she wind up creating the remake of something of an 80s toy commercial instead of working on her own ideas? It could be that she's just nostalgic about her childhood, an MLP toy, or something, but even then, what artist wouldn't rather work on their own ideas? I read this news story a few years ago. It was about 6 girls who all went to the same school and died on the same day, January 18th, 1989. A friend of mine from NC sent me this article from a small local newspaper. I forgot about it until I was watching a few episodes of MLP and realized the main characters are surprisingly similar to the girls who died. I decided to look up the article again. The paper had either gotten shut down or I had misremembered the name. So I tried tracking down my old World of Warcraft buddy and asked him for the article. Turned out he happened to have the file saved on his computer, and I was right. There's a definite connection here. The first girl, named Samantha Gales, was obviously the inspiration for Fluttershy, a shy, introverted girl. What her classmate didn't know was that she was consistently abused at home by her mother and stepfather. Her mother conceived her at the age of 15, and she blamed her for Samantha for ruining her life. This made Samantha self-conscious. When her stepfather moved in, this was made the neglect worse. The The stepfather never liked having to take care of Samantha when her mother was away, so he would lock her in the basement and leave her there, sometimes for a whole day. Her mother tolerated this, and as she grew, would hit Samantha for talking out of turn. When her half-sister was born, the abuse became considerably worse. She would be starved and forced to sleep outside, and sometimes beaten outright, because the dress in shabby clothes and had low self-esteem. She often picked on by other kids at school. Her only friends were animals she would rescue, which her family would make her get rid of. She committed suicide by overdosing on Valium. The second, named Janice Walters, was always one of the popular girls. She was rich, smart, beautiful, and seemed to live the charmed life. However, her parents argued consistently, and were really only together for appearance. She was held to a high standard, which made her a perfectionist. She wanted to be a designer and live in Paris, but her parents wanted to remain in Carolina and marry a proper man, one of the good breeding and high income. For the most part, her parents ignored her. Her parents' only concern was appearing rich and high social standing. But in reality, her mother married her father because of the money, and since he had accumulated so much debt, they had been losing money fast. This is what got her interested in fashion initially. Since starting to make her own fashion clothes to maintain the appearance of wealth, she died in a car crash when her mother and father got into another argument over money. While he was driving, her neck was snapped on impact, and she died instantly. She was clearly the inspiration for Rarity. Then there was Alexandria Matthews. Alex was a competitive girl. She always sought out to be the best at the best, especially at sports, track in particular. Her father always wanted a boy, and since her mother was declared incapable of having another child, he decided to raise her as if she was her son. In the end, though, she loved her mother and father and was more happy to play sports with her father. She excelled at them. Even this made her popular, and by the time she was in high school, she was being sought out by athletic scouts from colleges all over the country. This made her even try harder. She had always wanted to compete in the Olympics. However, when she was 15, her mother, who had been told she couldn't have another child, had a son. After that, her parents didn't pay much very attention to her, which made her more determined to succeed. She ended up pushing herself so hard in the track, she neglected her friends, her grades, even her personal health. At one point, she became so desperate, she started taking steroids. What her family didn't know was that she had a minor heart condition, that the steroids were worsening her condition. Since she was pushing herself so hard physically, she ended up collapsing during the match due to a heart complication. She died in the hospital a few days later. In the show, Rainbow Dash seems the most similar. The most similar to Applejack, Jamie Sanders, was a farm girl, just like the character based off her. What the show didn't include was that her farm was run down, and her family always struggled with money. She oftentimes worked odd jobs under the table to try to help to support her family. She had many brothers and sisters, and she was the second, which meant it was up to her and her brother to take care of the youngings. This meant she didn't have enough time to hang out with her friends or take extracurricular activities, or even do her homework on most nights. She had an aunt who her family from Manhattan was based off, who kept offering her and sending her money to support her mother and father, but they were proud and always refused. That is until her father died of a heart attack in 1987. Her mother followed shortly after, having to kill herself when she couldn't handle the pressure of taking kids all by herself. They were taken into by their senile grandmother, who was incapable of truly taking care of them. Jamie herself often helped out with the family's yard work to keep her family afloat. She died when she fell into a wood chipper. Pinkie Pie's inspiration probably has the saddest story. Katherine Jackson was a foster child and moved from home to home. Her birth father killed her mother and herself in a fit of rage. When she was 5, and she could never quite settle in a good home, some of the foster families who would take her in would merely be interested in the financial support adopting a child would bring, and would refuse to feed or clothe her. Even when she was in a nice home with a good family, the old memories still haunted her, breaking her fragile sanity into a million pieces. She would have nightmares of her mother screaming and bleeding and her father screaming for her, claiming to be after her next. By the time she was in high school, she completely snapped. She started to hallucinate and act out in class. Many of the other kids, even the teachers, assumed that she was merely hyperactive and was trying to be funny. She would oftentimes paint and draw and write about fantastical things, and dressed in over-the-top clothing. All the while, her condition was getting worse and worse. The voices and images become more realistic and more demanding. She died when she jumped off a building, one of the voices having to tell her that she could fly. What makes this last fact even more chilling is that Lauren originally designed Pinkie Pie to be a Pegasus, as seen in the early development sketches. The last Twilight Sparkle inspiration was a student by the name of Cynthia Little. She was held to a high standard from a young age. Her older brother was always getting awards for academic and athletic achievements, and she was held up to a same high standard. She ended up neglecting her friends in life in order for her to make sure what she got was the best grades. For a while, this worked. Her parents were proud of her accomplishments and bragged to their friends about having not just one genius child, but 2. This was until a local private academy for gifted started to become interested in her, among several other advanced students. She knew this would be the best opportunity. She could have proven herself as a perfect child, but the pressure was high. She knew that there were limited spots for new students, and she knew that there would be the best test and essay required to get in, so she became a little desperate. She studied to the point where she would hardly eat and never sleep. As the test closed in, she panicked and she opted to find an essay online to copy, and during the test resorted to cheating. When she was caught, her parents were horrified. She sank into a deep depression, eventually hung herself to save herself the shame of being an imperfect child. You might be wondering, now why Lauren Faust would be inspired to make a sweet children's show inspired by such depressing events. Perhaps she felt some odd need to give these girls closure, or perhaps tell their story in a way she could. Think about it. In one episode named The Cutie Mark Chronicles, each pony described on how each earned their cutie marks. Rainbow Dash, who was able to make a sonic rainbow on the same day all the girls to see to make them able to earn their cutie marks, clearly makes you tend to wonder about each girl's death in real life on the same day, and in how the show Fluttershy is able to take care of the animals adore. Rarity is a successful designer with loving parents. Rainbow Dash is in fact a great athlete. Applejack has a successful farm, Pinkie Pie is happy with not a care in the world, and Twilight Sparkle was accepted into exclusive school. Maybe, just maybe, she wanted to give these spirits of these girls what they always wanted. And I think they're happy. Party crashing. Halloween is far by my favorite time of the year. The one wonderful day where walking around in a mask is socially acceptable. Masks hold quite a unique place in society. A mask can transform anyone into something else, turn an actor into a character, hide the secret identity of a superhero, or even allow monsters to walk among men. You never know what's behind the mask until it's taken off. But that's the best part of Halloween. No one is going to take anyone's mask off. There was no gang of teenagers with their talking dog there to strip away my disguise and reveal the truth underneath. No, this is reality. And on Halloween, I'm perfectly able to hide in plain sight. Of course, wearing a mask has its own special meaning for me. I am not an actor, superhero, or even a monster. Not in a fictional term, at least. No, I simply use a mask as a means of entry. Any mask works really, so as long as it covers my face. I manage to use a different one every year. All I need is to walk on the streets of my suburban neighborhood, weave my way through various decorations, and dodge pecks of trick-or-treaters, until I hear the familiar blaring of loud music, like a sailor to siren at sea. I'm drawn to the music, to the party that it emanates from. Yes, this is why Halloween is wonderful. No one seems to ever question or ask at the door of Halloween parties. All I really need is to knock on the door and wave at the door when it opens. The mask makes people just assume I'm here for the party. Hell, some people just leave their door wide open, allowing even easier access to their home. On Halloween, no one gives a second glance towards a mask. Man making his way through the mist, which makes my hobby so much fun. They're completely oblivious as I approach their food. They continue to chatter and gossip as I add my own special ingredient to their bowl of punch. They continue to dance and play as I stab small sharp needles into their chocolate and sweets. It is not until after their first friend drops from the floor, even choking on the poison and coughing up blood needless, that people start to panic. It is the same every year. As soon as I leave the party and hear the chaos rising behind me, an unstoppable grin forms under my mask. Screams of terror are such a pleasant noise for such a pleasant holiday. Smiledog.jpg. You try to tell yourself over and over, it's just an image. Just a stupid picture of a dog that someone had photoshopped its teeth into. It isn't scary. Or at least it doesn't scare you. Not one bit. How could it scare you? It's just a picture. You tell yourself these things, but when you do, you lie. The image does scare you. Something about that smile. Too wide with too many teeth. The same all the better to eat you with. Smile that big bad wolf gave to Red Riding Hood. A smile full of threats and sharpness. A predatory smile. Again you try to bury the idea, to ignore it. But it's no use. Even when you close your eyes, you see it, smiling maniacally back at you. The eyes illuminated and searing, burning into your mind, your soul. You know right then, you have to get rid of it, to pass the image to someone else. To do as the thing says to spread the word. You know what you'll do these things because you must. Because if you don't, you know that eventually he pays you a visit. I first met in person with Mary E. in the summer of 2007. I had arranged with her husband of 15 years, Terrence, to see her for an interview. Mary had initially agreed, since I was not a newsman, but rather than an amateur writer getting information for a few early college assignments and, if all went according to plan, some piece of fiction. We scheduled the interview for a particular weekend when I was in Chicago on unrelated business. But at the last moment, Mary changed her mind and locked herself in the couple's bedroom, refusing to meet with me. For half an hour, I sat with Terrence as we camped outside the bedroom door. I listened and was taking notes while he attempted fruitlessly to calm down his wife. The things Mary said made little sense but fit the pattern I was expecting, though I could not see her. I could tell from her voice that she was crying, and more often than not, her objections to speaking with me in certain around incoherent describes of her dreams, of her nightmares. Terrence apologized profusely when we ceased the exercise, and I did my best to take it in with stride. Recall that I wasn't a reporter in a search of a story, but merely a curious young man in search of information. Besides, I thought at the time I could perhaps find another, similar case if I put my mind and resource to it. Mary E. was the synopsis for a small Chicago-based bulletin board in the system of 1992, when she first encountered Smiledog.jpg and her life changed forever. She and Terrence had been married for only 5 months. Mary was one in an estimate of 400 people who saw the image when it was posted as a hyperlink on the BBS. Though she is the only one who had spoken openly about the experience, the rest have remained anonymous or perhaps dead. In 2005, when I was only in 10th grade, Smile.jpg was the first to be brought up to my attention. My burn-going interest in the web-based phenomena, Mary was the most often cited victim of what's sometimes referred to as Smile.dog. The being Smile.jpg is a repute to display that caught my interest. Other than the obvious macabre element of the cyber legend of my proclivity towards this thing, was the sheer lack of information, usually to the point that people don't even believe in it, or even exist, that they believe it's a hoax. It is unique because though the entries of phenomenon centers on a picture file, the file is nowhere to be found on the internet. Certainly many photo manipulation simulacra litter the web, showing up with the most frequent on the sites such as Imageboard or 4chan, particularly the X-focused paranormal subboard. It is suspected that these are fake because they do not have the effect that the true Smile.jpg is believed to have, namely because onset temporal lobe epilepsy and acute anxiety. This purported reaction is the viewer is one of the reasons the phantom-like Smile.jpg is regarded such as disdain, since it's patiently absurd, though depending on who you ask, the reluctant to acknowledge Smile.jpg's existence might be just as such as out of fear, is out of disbelief. Neither Smile.jpg nor Smile.dog is mentioned anywhere on the Wikipedia, though the website features articles on such others perhaps more scandalous shock sites as Hello.jpg or Two Girls in One Cup. Any attempt to create a page or pertaining a Smile.jpg is similarly deleted by any of the encyclopedia's many admins. Encounters with Smile.jpg are the stuff of internet legends. Mary E.'s story is not unique. There are unverified rumors of Smile.jpg showing up in the early days of onset, and even one persistent tale in 2002. A hacker flooded the forum of humor and satire website Something Awful with a deluge of Smile.jpg pictures, rendering almost half the forum users at the time apolitic. It is also said that in the mid to late 90s, the Smile.jpg circulated on the onset as an attachment of a chain email with the subject line, "Smile, God loves you." Yet despite the huge exposures with these stunts would generate, there are very few people who admit to having experienced any of them, with no trace or file of any link that has ever been discovered. Those who claim to have seen Smile.jpg often weakly joke that they are way too busy to save a copy of the picture to their hard drive. However, all alleged victims offer the same description of the photo, a dog-like creature, usually described as appearing similar to a Siberian husky, illuminated by the flash of cameras. Sit in a dim room, the only background detail that is visible being a human hand extending from the darkness near the left side of the frame. The hand is empty, but is usually described as beckoning, of course. Most attentions to give to the dog, or dog creature, as some victims are more certain than others that what they claim to have seen. The muzzle of the beast is reputedly split with a wide grin, revealing 2 rows of very white teeth. Very straight, very sharp, very human-like teeth. This is, of course, not a description given immediately after viewing the picture, but rather a recollection of victims who claim to have seen the picture endlessly repeat in their mind's eyes during the time they are, in reality, and having epileptic fits. These fits are reported to continue intermittently, often while the victims sleep, resulting in a vivid and disturbing nightmare. These may be able to be treated with medication, though in some sense it is more effective than others. Mary E., I assumed, was not on effective medication. That is why, after my visit to her apartment in 2007, I have sent out flyers to several folklore and urban legend-oriented news groups, websites, and mailing lists, hoping to find the name of a supposed victim of Smiledog.jpg, who felt more interested in talking about his experience. For a long time, nothing happened. At a length, I forgot completely about my pursuits. Since I had begun my freshman year of college and was quite busy, Mary contacted me via email, however, near the beginning of March 2008. To jml@.com from maryE@.net. Subject: Last summer's interview. Dear Mr. L, I am incredibly sorry for my behavior last summer when you came to interview me. I hope you understand that it was no fault of yours, but rather my own problem that led me to act out as I did. I realized that I could have handled the situation better. However, I hope you will forgive me. At the time, I was afraid. You see, for 15 years I have been haunted by Smile.jpg and Smile.dog. It comes to me in my sleep every night. I know that sounds silly, but it is true. There is an infutable equality about my dreams, my nightmares, that make me completely unlike any real dream I ever had. I do not move or do not speak, I simply look ahead, and the only thing that's in my head is of me in that scene from that horrible picture. I see the beckoning hand, I see Smile.dog, it talks to me. It's not a dog, of course, though I am not quite sure what really it is. It tells me it will leave me alone if I do as it asks. All I must do is say, spread the word. That is how it phrases its demand. And I know exactly what it means. It wants me to show it to someone. And I could. The week after my incident, I received a mail with an envelope with no return address. Inside was only 3.5-inch floppy disk. Without having to check, I knew precisely what was on it. I thought for a very long time about my options. I could show it to a stranger, a co-worker. I could even show it to Terrence. As much as I was disgusted by myself, and what would happen then? Well, if Smile.dog kept its word, I could sleep. Yet if I lied, what would I do? And who was to say something was worse was not going to come for me if I did as the creature asked? So I did nothing for 15 years. Though I kept the disk hidden amongst other things, every night for 15 years, Smile.dog has come to my sleep and demanded me that I spread the word. For 15 years, I have stood strong, though there has been hard times. Many of my fellow victims on the BBS board where I first encountered Smile.jpg stopped posting. I heard some of them commit suicide, others remained completely silent, simply disappearing off the face of the web. They're the ones I worry about the most. I sincerely hope you will forgive me, Mr. L, but last summer when you contacted me and my husband about an interview, I was near to the breaking point. I decided I was going to give you the floppy disk. I did not care if Smile.dog was lying or not. I wanted to end. You were a stranger, someone I had no connections with, and I thought I would not feel sorrow when you took the disk as part of your research and sealed your fate. Before you arrived, I realized what I was doing, was plotting to ruin your life, and I could not stand the thought and the fact that I cannot. I am ashamed. Mr. L, I hope that this warning will dissuade you from further investigation of Smiledog.jpg. You may in time encounter someone who is, if not weaker than I, then wholly more depraved. Someone who would not hesitate to follow Smiledog's orders. Stop while you are still whole. Sincerely, Mary E. Terrence contacted me later that month with the news that his wife had killed herself. While cleaning up some various things she left behind, closing email accounts and things like that, he happened upon the message above. He was a man in shambles. He wept as he told me to listen to his wife's advice. He found the diskette, he revealed it, and burned it until it was nothing but a stinking pile of blackened plastic. The part that was most disturbing to him, however, was how the diskette had hissed as it melted, like some sort of animal, he said. I will admit that I was a little uncertain about how to respond to this. At first I thought perhaps it was a joke, with a couple blatantly playing with the situation in order to get a rise out of me. I quickly checked several Chicago newspapers' online obituaries, however, provide that Mary E. was indeed dead. There was, of course, no mention of suicide in the article. I decided that, for the time at least, I would not further pursue the subject, Smiledog.jpg, especially since I had finals coming up at the end of May. But the world has a odd way of testing me. Almost a full year after I'd returned from my disastrous interview with Mary E., I received another email. To jml@m.com from elzahart82@.com. Subject: Smile. Hello. I found your email address through a mailing list. Your profile said you were interested in Smiledog. I have saw it. It is not bad as everyone says. I have sent it to you for you to see. Just spreading the word. The final line chilled to me to the bone. According to my email client, there was one file attached called naturally Smile.jpg. I considered downloading it for some time. It was mostly like a fake, I imagine, and even if it weren't, I was never wholly convinced of Smile.jpg's particular powers. Mary E.'s account had shaken me, yes, but she was probably mentally unbalanced anyways. After all, how could a simple image do what Smile.jpg was said to accomplish? What sort of creature was it that could break one's mind with only the power of the eye? And if such things were patently absurd, then why did the legend exist at all? If I downloaded the image, if I looked at it, and if Mary turned out to be correct, if Smile.dog came to me in my dreams demanding that I would spread the word, what would I do? Would I live my life as Mary had, fighting against the urge to give in until I died? Or would I simply spread the word, eager to be put to rest? And if I choose the later route, how could I do it? Whom would I burn it turn to? If I went through my earlier intentions to write a short article about Smile.jpg, I decided I would attach it as evidence, and anyone who would read the article, anyone who took interest, would be affected. And even assuming the Smile.jpg attached to the email was genuine, would I be conspicuous enough to save myself in the manner? Could I spread the word? Yes. Yes, I could. Krampus. Each year on December 5th, a person in my hometown is brutally murdered. The police are at loss. With each victim, a poetic story is left behind. Below are the stories from the past 3 years. Frederick loved to smile, for he was always glad, happy, warm, and gentle, never ever sad. But Frederick had a secret, one he only knew. This man loved to strangle children until they turned them gold and blue. The townfolk never found them, for he was very smart. Frederick took their corpses and pulled them all apart. It couldn't be young Frederick, everyone would say. He's a man of God, we always see him pray. The cold night came and Frederick rested his head, but as soon as he heard a scratching underneath his bed, Frederick trembled as he looked, oil lamp in hand. On his bedroom floor, the demon had a plan. Away with you, beast, the night is dark and long. You have no business here, for I have done nothing wrong. Krampus only laughed as he shook his rusty chain. He hanged Frederick by his neck until he writhed in pain. The links constricted, digging into his skin. Frederick cried out, praying for his sins. He begged and pleaded until his final breath. With a beautiful snap, Frederick bled to death. Krampus hung him out to dry, and all the town folks began to cry. But not the children, for now their souls were free. And under Frederick's body, the phantom danced with glee. Greta loved herself more than she could ever bear. She never had enough and could never ever share. Want was never more, it was only need. Her envy grew and grew, and with it came her greed. Greta needed more, but money wasn't flush. So she stole from her family, it gave her quite a rush. It is not enough, to herself she would say, I must have it all, there is no other way. Into her grandparents' home, Greta crept inside. They had many treasure, jewelry, and gemstones paid. But when she looked about, wealth she did not find, only ancient Krampus with something in mind. Greta shrieked and trembled, staring at his claws. She knew there would be no mercy from this evil Santa Claus. You shall have the riches, Krampus said with a grin, and then he gave it to her, after peeling off her skin. Herman was a doctor, for that's what he would say, and every single patient they would have to pay. He cut and pulled and burned, and after he was done, for more he always yearned. This surgeon was a butcher, who had a taste for swine. With their bleeding flesh, he paired her fine red wine. The hunger took him, body, mind, and soul. Yet this evil, it never take its toll. Herman was alone. In his chair he sat. All the human meat had made him very fat. He drifted off to slumber and began to snore, until an angry Krampus burst through the door. Herman could not move. He wet himself in fright. Krampus licked his lips and let out a squeal of delight. First he gouged out his eyes, and Herman could not see. Then Krampus feeled his tongue. It was tender as it could be. Christmas is joyous, full of love and cheer. But you must remember the one thing that we all fear. So be kind to one another. Show love and heed this text, or Krampus will find you, and you will be certainly next. The police are seeking any information that may help bring the killer to justice. As of this morning, 3 more bodies have been found in the neighborhood village. Mario. Note: this is a true story, and sums up what was going on through my mind as I was playing this, and I had no idea I was about to be bullshitted the way I was when I was playing this, and I can say it was 5-bar the creepiest hack I've ever played. If you were on IRC, you would have heard me talking about it as well. But anyways, it was late at night, and I don't have a lot of time, and I need to get to sleep. So this is all I have time for right now. So it all happened on tonight of all nights. I was bored, obviously contemplating what I thought I could do to waste time as I chattered with the people on the hashtag SMWC. We had good times and shared a few laughs together. Out of boredom, I decided to patrol the hacks waiting in the moderator section. Seems that we had quite a bit 33 if I recalled correctly. The first few hacks I saw, I sorted them by dates, were a couple really horrible ones, and bad screenshot boots. Naturally showed these hacks to the Centralites, currently on hashtag SMWC. We were laughing at how some of them were really bad. But then I got to a hack called Mario. Just that, nothing more, nothing less. The description seemed quite odd, as if Japanese hacker was trying to translate the original plot of Super Mario World in English and failing horribly. I showed this to Kirian, and he started laughing at the description. It reads the follows. As you play the role of Super Mario Plumber, verify that you are the beautiful Pirin Sintoruzuru. Again, Browser kidnaps the evil king. It is your job to save her. This hack includes 6 levels of very long. I simply dismissed this as someone trying to act Japanese and release a crappy hack with some edits, or so. That's what I thought this was, at first. Curiosity got the best of me. I decided to download the hack, not knowing what I was in for, since the single screenshot of the hack was just the title screen with nothing but the letters Mario from Super Mario World's title screen. I thought it was a little odd how they were no dates or anything either, as hackers usually place their names and dates on the title to mark when the project was started. So, when I opened up the hack, I was greeted by 2 files, one called 3007014, a simple .txt file with 27 kilobytes in size, and the IPS file simply named Mario. For some odd reason, I wanted to see what was the author of the hack had to say, but when I opened up the hack in the notepad, there was nothing but indistinguishable symbols and letters and punctuations. Sort of like when you open up a ROM in a text editor in a notepad. Seems like the author just completely copied the ROM to a .txt form, though I could be wrong. Taking a closer look at the top of that .txt file, mixed in with the gibberish, I found only the thing that looked like English there. Here is the piece of what I found. Find me, find me, find me, find me, find me. To be honest, I don't know what to make of this, and I thought it was simply a waste of my time by making me find some text in the gibberish file that I am willing to bet no one will ever be able to make sense of. I decided that because my interest was growing steadily, I would start looking through my horribly disorganized downloaded folder for a copy of the clean ROM, which I had downloaded a great deal time before the events of tonight unfolded. And an IPS patcher, of course, my choice for the job was Lunar IPS. So I then processed to move the ROM and the IPS patcher to the folder with the hack. I patched the ROM, not knowing what to expect next, and I quickly hurried to drag it to SNES and played what I thought was to be a terrible form of a ROM image. I noticed on boot up, the author had taken the time to change the header of his hack. Instead of the usual Super Mario World you normally see booting up a ROM in a SNES, it just had the letters Mario. There again. At this point, I gained a little hope, because normally people who do horrible half-ass edits to the ROM generally don't do enough change to the header title. I thought I wasn't going to waste my time with this, and my mood brightly steadied at the thought of seeing what the author had to offer in this interesting little hack. So the title screen loaded exactly like it would with Super Mario World, except it had just Mario on the title like I mentioned earlier. Something else had grabbed my interest more so than usual, the absence of 3-layer tiles on the title screen. Mario's normal bright colors and happy palette seem, how can I put it, dull. What was once a violet like red was now seemed like a gray with a slight tint of red to it. And I'm fairly sure the pants were looking more gray than blue too. I thought this was strange, and I wonder why he had decided to give Mario such a dull palette. Regardless as to what his intentions were, I felt that something was more wrong. Not in the sense that the palette was slightly bad, but the hack was empty, like something had happened. Upon pressing start and selecting a new file, like a lot of other countless Mario hacks I had played in the past, there was some sort of intro screen that basically described the entirety of the plot in a short paragraph, just small enough to fit into a small black box. I began reading, and for the most part, the message stayed the same, but there was one key factor that made this interesting. Apparently, the main antagonist of the hack wasn't Bowser at all. It was Mario. The message reads as follows. Welcome! This is Dinosaur Land. In this strange land, we find that Princess Toadstool is missing again. Looks like Mario is at it again. What the? This wasn't the original message from Super Mario World, I thought to myself. Normally I would think of nothing of this. Seeing as how, over nearly 2 years at SMW Central, I have played countless hacks and have seen many different intro messages, but this one really stuck out. At this point, I definitely knew there was something odd about this hack. Upon letting the intro level music play, I pressed the start button on my controller to finally get to the overworld and begin my journey into this unknown hack. Upon entering the overworld, everything seemed normal. Same old level paths, same old music, but the levels' names were different. Instead of Yoshi's house, like it always has been every time I've ever played Super Mario World, it was now simply just Yoshi's. The house part was gone. I thought this was strange, and I began to lose hope in the hack because it seemed like barely anything has changed at all from the original. I was hoping to see something new. Well, unlucky for me, I got my wish, as you'll see when you read on. I decided to enter the level out of curiosity. When I entered, the whole house that's normally there was gone. No more smoke, no more fire, no more birdies, no more treehouse. At all that was left was the message box. I decided to hit it. Upon opening the message, I expect to be there was replaced with what seemed to be binary. Apparently it says, Notepad. At this point, I was on IRC telling everyone about the hack. Was starting to weird me out, which in itself yielded some sarcastic response, but hey, I expected it anyways. After this, my interest level in the hack skyrocketed, and along with my paranoia, oh boy, was I in for some fun. So I decided to head left upon reaching what was known before as Yoshi Island 1. The level was now labeled Never Come Back. Now, I thought things were going to be all Kazooie death traps, because generally that is what people name their levels in Kazooie hacks to make sure that the player doesn't go there. To my surprise, it wasn't quite that way though. I wish that it had been. Upon entering the level 105, I was greeted by this insanely loud clown car sound that Bowser flying vehicle makes right before Peaches falls out. Of course, with my headphones being moderately high, the sound scared the living shit out of me, which wouldn't have happened if I had been so nervous beforehand. I decided at this time it would be best if I turned the volume on my headphones down, as to not get any more unpleasant surprise such as this one. When I entered the level, other than the music, everything seemed to be the same, except for the fact that the little Koopa that slides on the ledge wasn't there anymore, nor the bonsai bill. The dragon coin was still there, however, for some odd reason I wasn't able to collect it, or rather any dragon coins at all. The author made it certain of that. I also noticed that there was a brown used block near the spot where the bonsai bill normally shows up. I can only assume this was a revisit to the level after I had beaten it, like I heard in a half-assed creepy story in other Mario games. Now, I was wondering why things were like this, making me wonder about the intro message. Had Mario done something previously to Dinosaur Land? Was this in Bowser's point of view? I quickly dismissed the option because it seemed kinda stupid. So that left me thinking that Mario at some point in this time in the author's story did something. But what? What did Mario do? My mind was nothing but rushing thoughts at this point. However, I quickly dismissed them and ventured further into the level, only to find all blocks had basically been hit. Coins had been collected, save dragon coins, though those were still unattainable. That there were no enemies, and that I could not no longer go down pipes. What kind of bullshit am I playing here? I kept thinking to myself. At this point, I felt uncomfortable. I decided to keep venturing. Eventually, I came across a message box, which I wasn't surprised was still in the level. Being the idiot I am, I went and hit the box. Upon hitting it, I was greeted with the familiar black box once again. The message was edited, obviously, as I figured this was a given at this point. It reads as follows: I hate you. Now, I thought that things were starting to get the vibe that the author was a twisted and warped individual, and that I was right about Mario having done something. At this point, I was basically rushing to get to the end of the level, so I just scurried by, and then I came across another message box. However, this one was blank box with point of advice at the top, with nothing else in it. I quickly disregarded and headed off further to the right, hoping to free myself from this hell that was once level 105. Upon reaching the end, I saw fire flowers in the top block where the four-way block intersection usually to be at. However, it was too high for me to reach by normal means, so I continued onward, like the blind, curious idiot I am would do. So finally I beat the level, and as usual, the path of the Yellow Switch Palace was unlocked. I decided to head up to the path that normally leads the Yellow Switch Palace, and I found that when I entered the main overworld, every other landmass and decorations besides the ghost from the ghost house and Yoshi's Island itself were gone. Nothing really changed at the Yellow Switch Palace except the switch message. All that changed was the Switch Palace was changed to Mario World. Boring. Anyways, just when I thought I was done with this abomination that calls itself a hack, I found that Yoshi's Island 2 also has been edited. Oh joy, I thought to myself. Upon reaching Yoshi's Island 2, I found that it had been renamed to Yoshi's House, the original name to level 104. I decided to enter and found that the palette of the level had been changed along with the background. They seemed to have been changed to the same palette as Yoshi's Island 3. You know, greenish tan and such, except the background was pushed down some and was now a rotting brown color. And the vegetation on the FG was now no longer present. I decided to explore the level a bit and came across a trail of Koopas. The countless players have used a shell to rack up free 1-ups. I decided to ignore them and go see if there's any more of the level had been changed. I eventually came across the question that holds Yoshi and decided to free him. Upon freeing him, I got this message. Hooray! Thank you for rescuing me. My name is Yoshi. On my way to rescue my friends, Mario trapped me in that egg. This had me wondering what kind of sick and twisted hack I was playing. I had thought all the possible scenarios of Mario attacking Dinosaur Land horribly and causing irreversible damage. The author had me on the hook with this sick little game. And like any other idiot, I took the bait and kept coming back for more. Somewhere not far from Yoshi's question mark block, I found a message box, in the same place I remembered that it always had been. Though if I've remembered anything at all from playing this, it's that whatever had to be in that message box, the messages was not going to be remotely normal in the slightest. This made me hesitant to hit it, but I ended up doing so anyways. I wanted to find out more. The message I was greeted was as followed. But is there anything I can do to change your mind? What the fuck? I thought to myself. What the hell did that even mean? Change my mind. What would I change my mind about anyways? Was this about Mario and whatever he did? About how people were trying to convince him to stop? Was Yoshi trying to talk to me through message box? Or was this about me? About me playing the hack? Asking me as if the hack was trying to talk to me through the message box. Either way, whether it had more backstory on Mario had done, or if it was questioning my decision to keep going, I decided to keep progressing despite the obvious sign that I should have quit playing the hack a while ago. As I progressed further, I found that I was right. All vegetation was now gone, and nothing was left at all, save a few enemies, like chucks and moles and such. Even the pipes were gone. I came across another message box. Like all the other times before, I decided to hit it. I was greeted with yet another cryptic message. Point of advice. This is the selfish way out. The selfish way out? What the hell? Was he calling me selfish for continuing to play the hack despite the warnings? Had Mario made some kind of selfish decision that only benefited him? Was Yoshi trying to still talk to me? What the hell was this guy trying to do to tell me? At this point, I was creeped out to the point I was shaking slightly. A mix of anticipation, fear, and the fact that my room was terribly cold last night. I closed the message box and once again proceed further. The area with the mole seemed the same, except for the fact that the block next to the vine block was gone, along with the happy clouds and dragon coins the vine allowed access to. This made me feel gloomy, to say the least, not so much frightened as I was depressed. It's a feeling I could really explain. From this point on, it basically just a big empty stretch of land. To the end of the level, I proceeded quickly. I wanted to get the fuck out of there, as I felt that I had spent enough time looking around. So me and Yoshi, I still had him at the time, opened up the next path on the overworld. It too was changed. What was going on was once Yoshi's Island 3 is now Yoshi Island 7. Memories of Super Mario Bobbity World flooded my mind. How the levels would take giant leaps in numbers and orders, which made it seem ridiculous. Though at the time I didn't quite find it humorous, due to the common sense of obvious reason explained earlier. I entered the level. As I entered, I was welcomed to a solid black background and blue and gray colored floor. The place seemed frozen, lifeless, and barren. There was nothing in the level at all. Save the goal point. Just a clear stretch of land with nothing else at all. I quickly lost interest and finished the level. This was what seemed like the most empty and creepy level in the game, though as you'll read on, it gets far worse. With the level being, a new path opens up. Yoshi's Island 4 was now just leave now. Now I was hesitating as to whether I would stop playing, but my interest kept me going further. At this point, hashtag SMWC was nothing but me posting and finding and messaging from the hack, so others could experience what I was experiencing. The channel sadly was unusually inactive. Seemed like no one really cared or wasn't around. I felt alone. I proceeded into the level. For the most part, everything seemed the same, save for the fact that there was now no water at all to keep me from falling in the pits without using Yoshi as a sacrifice. The level was also a void of all enemies as well. I hit another box. Point of device. You get if you cut the at the end. If you collect, you can. Whenever I got to an area that seemed far for me to jump, I found that I could just walk right across the area, thus getting rid of the need to use Yoshi's as a sacrifice. It's apparent that the hack wanted me to keep him. I could tell that much. I was able to get to the pipe. That usually leads to the exit level. I went in and I found that the room was exactly the same. Everything in the right place. Nothing edited, or so I thought. The message box once again broke the mood of that brief moment of relief I had gained upon entering the pipe. At this point, I was questioning whether I should keep going to see how it ends, or quit now while I still have a bit of common sense left. The message box was sort of indistinguishable, and I could really make sense of it. For a moment, I tried to figure out what the box meant, but eventually, I gave up and beat the level. I figured that the box wasn't worth the time anyways. With the level beaten, the path to the first world castle opened, now renamed from hashtag 1Iggy's Castle to hashtag 1GoBack. I sure did feel welcome here. I decided to completely ignore the level's name, as I just wanted to get it over with and be done with this forever. What seemed like a normal castle intro was made especially creepy, even the fact that I had to dismount Yoshi. I felt, for the first time, that I actually abandoned him, and I was wishing I had taken him with me. The inside of the room at the castle looked strange. There was this darkish, bluish, greenish, black lava on the ceiling, and there were gold points that looked like pillars. Aside from that, next to each pillar there was an increasing amount of message boxes next to each pillar. The further I got, the room was basically just a big hallway with no enemies or anything of the sort. Every message box I pressed either gave me a blank box with Yoshi's signature at the bottom, or the message that reads the follow: "Don't you think you've caused enough trouble?" Another cryptic message, though at this point I wasn't surprised. Not in the slightest. Again, the thought in my head started circling, wondering what exactly Mario had done, why he was here, and why everything seemed to hate everything about him and wanted him gone forever. I was feeling more depressed than scared at this point, to be honest, and I had no idea what to expect next. I proceeded down the long hallway, checking messages from the boxes filled with nothing but the same two messages over and over again. It's like they were telling me to stop playing or something, obviously. I ignored them and kept going on. I eventually reached the end of the hallway. There was a door which I entered. I was welcomed by nothing but a small stretch of land. And at that, the level was auto-scrolling, so I figured that this must be the end. The author wanted me to jump in the pit and commit suicide or something, thus ending my journey. I was wrong. The auto-scrolling pushed me over to the ledge and I was still walking. Unfortunately, the whole level was nothing but a long stretch of invisible land to another small piece of land just big enough to fit a door for a boss. The auto-scroll came to a stop, and I prepared for the worst. I gathered my composure, swallowed some of my spit in my mouth, and took a deep breath. I entered. Nothing but a normal Iggy boss. I felt cheated in a way. Though I was happy to think it was finally over, I defeated Iggy with 2 jumps, effortlessly, which was actually the quickest I ever beaten him before. After he fell in the lava, the course cleared message popped up as usual. It ended and I was brought to the rescue egg scene. Though instead of the usual message, I was shown something disturbing and vastly different. The profile for the scene of a crime. It was as followed. Victim number 1. Eyeballs were unable to be found. The victim was found laying on the carpet. Causing of the death was unknown. Hand marks with undefinable fingerprints were found all over the corpse. What the fuck is wrong with this guy? I said as I read the disturbing message. I mean, it was a hack, but still, who the hell was this victim? Why were her eyes gouged out? And just what could have made those undefinable fingerprints that were found on her body? Was this Mario's doing? Is this what the author was trying to tell me? And furthermore, was the girl Princess Stoolstool? It took me a while to see if I read the message correctly, then I processed outwards. Though I was wondering what happened next, since the main map was completely gone, and there was no trace of it anywhere. To my surprise, it was still showed the path marked the donut plains, the event tile still being there, marking the path to the lone level on the giant map that was once the main world. It was still called Donut Plains 1. I thought we were finally done once more, but when I entered the level, I could see that the previous time I was once again wrong. Upon entering, I saw 2 message boxes. They say as followed. There's no way out of here. Fly away. I found it quite strange that both message boxes were contradicting each other. One was telling me that there was no way out of this accursed hell, and the other one was telling me that if I could fly away, I could be free, though I saw no feathers or enemies to grab one with. Was this telling me that I could either rise up and go to heaven, or stay in hell forever wallowing in despair? Did I need a cape to proceed? And what happened after this? Is this whole game like this? I began to create more thoughts in my head trying to figure out the message box out. But to no avail. I proceeded to walk to the right. I made a jump, but I found that I was stuck in an area. There was an invisible wall. And I had thought if I hit a dead end, when I landed, tried to move to the right again to see if there was any way to go on. All of a sudden, I heard the pipe sound, and I was marking the pipe animation, except there was no pipe present, so it looked quite odd. I was then taken to the level with a black background, stone blocks for grounds, and a small door. I was immediately given a mushroom to prevent me from entering it, so I proceeded further to see if there was anything else in the level. I found that the room was nothing but a long stretch of concrete, blocks, and doors that were too small for me to enter because of the mushroom I got. It's obvious that the author didn't want me to go through any of them, or wouldn't have gotten the mushroom in the first place. As I proceeded, I found myself at a dead end. Since there was nothing left for me to look at, I tried to go right again. It worked. I went through a brick wall. It acted like a pipe. And I did a pipe animation that looked like I was going into darkness. I was then taken to a small room with what seemed like a pit and a wall. I jumped down the pit as how there was no other option, though I found that the bottom of the pit was solid, and I tried pressing down in a bunch of areas until I came across a pipe. Mario slowly did the pipe transition downward off the screen. Expecting another level, I waited, but there was no more, just a black screen. I was unable to continue, unable to pause or exit the level, or move. There was nothing at all. This was the video game representation of death. A crash. Mario had died. After playing, I think I finally understand what was happening. I believe Mario was atoning for his actions, eventually being plummeted into hell that looked exactly like Yoshi's Island, where he had lost the grip of death forever. I finally done playing and quite revealing at that. The nightmare was over. Activity on the IRC seemed to go back up again. I quickly shared my tales with the rest of #SMWC and typed this documentation of it. If you feel daring enough, you too can witness my tale firsthand. Remember, guys, it's only a hack. It can't hurt you, or can it? pewdiepie.exe bonus episode. At this point in the internet, nearly everybody knows or has been known about the YouTuber PewDiePie. I personally found out his videos to be okay, which most personally consistently brawled out in the comments section. A few days ago, I decided to check out his channel for any new updates, and I found out some. The average surgery simulator, horror video game stuff, as usual. I scrolled down until I saw a video I hadn't watched, which was strange because I remember watching most of the surrounding videos. The video's thumbnail didn't surprise me much. It was just black. I thought it was a little strange, but I didn't get to see the video title because near instantly after clicking it, it went to a full screen. It looked like any PewDiePie video with his face in the top right corner of the screen. At first, thinking it was just a mistake on PewDiePie's part. There are no games, just black screen and PewDiePie's webcam. He narrated like any other game, reacting to everything I couldn't see. The video was 10 minutes long, so around 5 minutes I paused the video and scrolled down to the comments to see what was going on. Every comment was basically what you see on every other one of his videos, as if he were actually playing the game. I was in the middle of writing the comments, the video unpaused. I assume it was me just accidentally pressing the spacebar key. I scrolled up to the video to watch it. PewDiePie was looking straight towards me. PewDiePie was looking left and down, since this is how the camera is angled. So it was weird that he was suddenly right in front of the webcam. He continued to do nothing for the next 30 seconds, in which he broke the silence by restarting his usual intro line. Even though the video was nearly 6 minutes in, when he was about to do his famous screech, when he said his name, the video went to black. It was black about for 7 minutes in. After the video resumed, I could see a terrified looking PewDiePie on the right. He didn't say anything or do anything. He just looked at whatever he saw, obviously scared beyond belief. This wasn't how PewDiePie normally was when he was afraid. He would usually screech and laugh it off a few seconds later. I could see that he was genuinely afraid. He started looking around himself, as if he had heard something. I could hear a few muffled footsteps in the background of the video, which was probably why PewDiePie looked so paranoid. He got up from his seat and looked around. The video cut there, but it was only 8 minutes in. After a minute, the video was back on. As far as I could tell, it was being recorded from a poor quality mini camera. PewDiePie was running while holding the camera, so I could basically just see the ground until there was only a second left in the video. He pointed the camera towards himself, tears in his eyes, and repeated the words "Flotmik" until the video finally ended. I don't know what happened, or why no one saw what I saw, but I decided best to not bring it up in the comments. Just before I started writing this, I translated "Flotmik." It was Swedish for "forgive me."